try to do something physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual every day. Adds value to my life. Is your business doing the profit margins you want? I think that there's power in that word no, but also power in the clarity of having a vision for yourself.
So I usually do an intro, so it's kind of weird not doing an intro, but we'll just rock and roll with it. So I have a great friend of mine on today, Maggie Buchanan. Maggie, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
So I've actually lived a lot of places, which I think is kind of a fun fact.
Okay.
I was born in Corpus Christi, Texas. I moved to Rochester, Minnesota. When I was 12, we moved to Seattle. I went and played soccer for Concordia University in Irvine, California. So I lived in Orange County, and then to Las Vegas for 14 years, and then here.
So you've been all over the map. Corpus Christi, Texas. I was in Corpus Christi a little bit for a tech school when I was in the Air Force. There's a small Air Force base there. Yeah, there's not a whole lot else in Corpus Christi,
There's
Texas.
shrimp.
Yeah, there's shrimp,
Yeah.
right? And so not a lot of things going on there. So you've been all over the place. How'd you end up landing in Greenville, South Carolina?
So in November of 2021, my kids lost their dad, and their oldest brother went to South Carolina upstate and played basketball. Shout out to Michael Buchanan.
There you go.
And he went and played overseas, but before he left to go overseas, he fell in love with his college sweetheart, who went to Furman. And they got married 2 years ago, June, I believe. And so we knew that he was going to be here. And after their dad passed, we came to Greenville for Christmas, actually.
Gotcha.
And we just visited and completely fell in love with the city. The funny thing is that Michael was supposed to meet us and come in from Estonia, but he blew his meniscus and wasn't able to come. And just to show like the hospitable nature and beauty of the people in the South, which I'm completely in love with this area, his wife and her family said, just come anyway. We'll host you, we'll show you around, figure it out, and we did. And so we came and visited and completely loved it, and I happened to poke around and look at a couple houses just because I'm like, oh, what does the real estate look like here in Greenville?
What year was that?
That was 2021 in December.
Okay, so that wasn't that long ago.
That was December.
Yeah.
Yep. And
so real estate was crazy.
It was super crazy then, and I looked at one house, didn't like it, and my realtor went across the street to say hello to his pastor, and the house next door, the guy was hammering in the sign for sale by owner.
Oh, my.
And he said, I don't know if it's anything you want, I don't know how much it is, but come and look in the windows, and I'm pretty sure the dude lives in the neighborhood. And he did, and he showed us, and he accepted our offer. The appraisal came in, I did the financing, done deal. And we moved here in April.
So that's pretty wild
Yeah.
considering how the real estate market was in 2021 when everything was on like bidding wars and it was just crazy. So, but that's one of the things I love to talk about too. That's what I love to talk about faith, right? Having massive faith, and God always has a plan. Like even through all that, I mean, and I always say God's not random. Like a for sale by owner sign, the guy's hammering it in the ground. Like that had to give you some pretty significant moments of reassurance in your life, right?
Definitely. And it also ended up working out 2 months later for my mom, almost in the same way. And now she's here with us.
Yeah.
So
that's why I'm huge on gratitude, because moments like that in our lives when you're in a town from somewhere else, you don't know anybody, it's not random, right? And so how have things been since you've moved? Let's talk about that a little bit, because that's been a few years now.
Yeah, it has. And it took me at least a year to even want to build my business in a new place.
Sure.
Because I had a branch of 22 people in Las Vegas, about 12 loan officers and 10 support staff, and we were doing about $15 million a month out of that branch, which is, I mean, with the purchase prices back then, it's decent.
Sure.
But it's not something that I wanted to jump right back into because I felt like I needed to understand the dynamics of the area. I'm a mortgage lender. I work for Neighborhood Loans, and getting to know how realtors work, it's an attorney state versus an escrow state. I
Right.
mean, there's a bunch of stuff that I felt like I needed to learn. But most importantly, I wanted to make sure that my kids were okay, because I needed to get them connected to therapy, make sure that they were plugging in, meeting people, and it literally took a year probably for them to not just be quiet and in their rooms.
Sure.
And that was my number one priority. So I just started networking about a year after we came, May of 2022. I went to Greenville Networking Group first, and it was just super welcoming, and it just kind of was like a step in the right direction. I had a very dark time right before that.
Sure.
I actually felt despair for maybe like the third time ever in my life, and I didn't really know, because I had spent so much time tending to the family and making sure that they were okay, was I going to be able to make money again? And I had sold my houses in Las Vegas, so we were okay.
Right.
But I needed to start making money again,
Right.
so I plugged into networking.
Got to turn the machine back on.
Yeah.
I tell you what's funny is the difference between moms and dads. Like when you showed up, your kids came first. Like when a dad showed up, they'd probably be like, "We need to go get paid. Like y'all gonna have to eat ramen noodles. We got to go get paid. You can live in a tent in the back of the truck."
I would have had to do that if I hadn't had the proceeds from the houses that we sold in Las Vegas. So thank God for that.
So let's talk about that a little bit. You know, there's all kinds of opinions about everything and you can find anyone that fits whatever answer you want on the internet. But obviously, you and I are both probably fans of acquiring real estate assets in life. Because they can, and they do put money in your pocket. People always go, hey, is it the right time to buy? And I'm like, well, I always think about like my grandparents or parents. I think my parents' first house was $17,000, and today that thing's probably worth like $370,000 in Arden. They don't own it anymore, but real estate always goes up in value. And when you sell it, I don't think I've ever been at a closing table when a seller has sold and they haven't walked away with a check. Ever. I mean, there's been some situations where it may have been a small check, but they walked away with something.
Yeah.
And usually it's been a pretty healthy check. And then also, the capital gains can be deferred on that if you live in it for 3+ years. So I think that's a huge thing. And you owning those homes kind of give you the cushion to be able to get into a new place, take care of your kids, get to know the new market, which is something else I want to talk about too. A lot of people, they're always like, oh, I can't do that there. I can't move. I can't relocate. I don't know that market well. Well, everybody gets started in any market. Yeah. Even if it's a market that and you were in, you started somewhere at ground zero and got to know it. So you just take that same skill set anywhere that you go. And we talked about that actually Friday. Liz brought up the question about, hey, when you're down or kind of in the slumps or business is slow, what do you do? And talk about going back to the basics. So when you moved here, that was probably some of the things that you had to implement. You had to go back to the basics of, hey, you know what? I'm just going to get out and go meet people. Yeah. Right?
Definitely. We just started doing events. And during that time, the interest rates had just gone up in a crazy way, and they basically tried to put the brakes on inflation by utilizing the housing market, which they do often. And so we started thinking, let's just do some events where we can all get together who are all struggling together, which include real estate agents and really anybody related to the real estate industry at that time. And so our first event was just like a bingo event at 1885 Tap Room in Simpsonville. We probably had 40 people there, and that was our first event ever. Yeah. And then we just continue to have events and try to give back and bring people together, bring like minds together. I just started doing something called BizFit.
Okay. Yeah, I saw that.
Yep. It's networking through fitness, just so that you have that additional.
And that was Jordan Floyd?
Well, Jordan, and it's funny, I approached Jay, who is my trainer at Limitless Fit, and I said, hey, I have this idea, which is something that I did in Las Vegas, and the gentleman who I did that with in Las Vegas did it on a much bigger scale. He had BizFit worldwide. Wow. They went to Mexico, New York, Florida.
It's a whole thing.
Yeah, whole thing. And so I'm just doing BizFit SC. Yeah. But I brought it up to Jay, and he said, funny you should say that. Jordan and I were just talking about having a monthly networking at Limitless. So now the gym portion is handled. So we have a recurring thing at Limitless. We called that Netflix. You can chill later.
Yeah, that's funny.
And then BizFit is going to include hiking and biking and whatever else, just so that you're networking with people that you have something in common with other than going to have a drink, and then you forget who you even talked to or why you have this business card.
Similar like we had talked about, I don't know, probably what it was, 2 years ago when we talked about a similar concept of, hey, let's get outside and go do things and do networking different. Because I also got tired of the way that networking was done. You'd go networking and it was just people getting together to drink and complain. And for me, that's not fun nor productive, so I don't like participating in either of those things that aren't fun or productive. So I think that's a really great thing. And isn't there a Facebook group for that? You have a Facebook group? What's it called?
BizFit SC.
Is it BizFit? But I thought there was another one that you ran to for events and those kind of things.
We had Better Together.
Okay.
SC.
Okay, that's what I was thinking, and maybe that
one's just
shifted.
It's shifted a little bit, just because I wanted to run more things through Mortgages by Maggie, events and things like that, so that it was more of a direct line to business, hopefully, with the people that I'm networking with. And I thought that the cover of Better Together SC wasn't really necessary, but it really did serve its purpose. Yeah. And I don't want to take anything away from that, because that was the first thing that Danielle Pearson and I did, and she is at, I believe, Azalea Title now, and she's marketing rep. She's wonderful at her job, and it just was a really good combination, because her target audience was real estate related people, and so was mine, and we were able to get through that harder time together. And that was really the premise behind that.
So let's talk about a couple of things you just touched on. One was, you started something and it may not have landed where you thought, and that's okay. A lot of people, they think they got to get it right the first time right out of the gate, right? So let's talk about that. Let's talk about different business strategies, Facebook groups, social media marketing, and then also you talked about doing things together, right? Which I know you're big on, right? You want to do things together. That's why the group is called what it's called. But first off, let's talk about that concept about how a lot of people, they get stuck in perfection paralysis, right? When in reality, if you just get out there and you go start building relationships and you start a Facebook group, because Facebook groups are great ways to build an audience. One of the things I heard one time is a lot of people, they want to have a business or something to offer people, or a service or some way to help, but then they don't want to build a stage to offer it to people on, right? And social media is a massive way that we, have in our world nowadays that we didn't have when we were kids.
And it's free.
And it's free that you can get out there and do things. We were talking at the power panel about people doing lives, Facebook lives. And I don't know if you noticed in that room when we asked the question about who does Facebook lives, and like 5 people raised their hand. And it's a powerful tool that you can use and use for free. And even before this, we were talking about the power of like digital real estate and how content and social media, has a place, especially if you're an entrepreneur or in business, and you can get out there and you can do things for free. But let's talk about perfection paralysis, because you started with that. Now you're doing BizFit.
Yeah.
Usually there are 2 different types of people. There are people who get hung up in perfection paralysis, and then there are people that operate like bull in a china shop. I'm the bull in the china shop kind of guy, so I'm not really the perfection paralysis kind of person.
I kind of have both.
Yeah, I can. Sometimes I have some OCD about organization and stuff like that. But as far as like perfection paralysis, you ever have to work with somebody with that? And you're like, listen, we just got to get this done. Like imperfect action, hammers it all the time. So that's a struggle. But I want to encourage people that are listening, don't let it hang you up. I know a lot of really successful people who started out with one thing and then ended up somewhere totally different. We talk about that a lot too, and I think it got brought up at the power panel about how somebody had asked, do you do what you went to college for?
Yeah.
And most people don't end up doing that. And so whatever you start in from a marketing perspective or a sales perspective or a business or entrepreneur perspective doesn't define where you have to land.
Right.
And then also the reality is that things change. I was having this conversation with somebody, I don't know if it was this weekend, talking about how business changes, right? We're kind of creatures of habit and creatures of comfort. We're naturally wired that way. But the economy changes, business changes, interest rates change, so strategies have to change. We change as people, we grow.
Yep.
And so you've always got to be willing to navigate that, personally and professionally. In the market. But also another big thing that you touched on was doing it together, right? You made a friend, you built a relationship, and then you decided to do something together. And I find a lot of entrepreneurs, they kind of want to look at other people as competition instead of partners. And competition's a good thing, and everybody kind of is in a competition, but go find people that you want to do business with. And be friend with those people and get to know those people and build partners, because referrals, you always want to be the guy or the girl. Hey, here's my mortgage lady. Hey, here's my paint guy. Here's the fence person. Hey, here's this person. Here's who these do that. Here's social media person. But you can't be that person to somebody if you don't go build a relationship with them. So there's definitely huge power in relationships.
I feel like that's one of the main things that I really enjoy about this area, especially compared to Las Vegas.
Yeah.
The networking is so much better.
Really?
Yeah. And I feel
so that's a win for Greenville, the upstate
time.
South Carolina, right?
I think so.
Better networking than Vegas.
I feel like almost anything, almost anything you put out there, people are down to jump on board and to help or to participate or whatever the case may be, or enough people, I should say, and people just genuinely want to help each other. And I'm not saying that, Las Vegas is full of just like negative, terrible people at all, but it's so saturated.
Sure.
And so I have found that everybody's been really welcoming, but also just really ready to like, let's go. Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So
I have found that in the upstate, there's like a huge entrepreneurial hub of people. And most people really want to see other people win, which I find very refreshing, because a lot of times in life, people, they do see you as competition, that kind of stuff. Even in the same business, I have referral partners for real estate and that kind of stuff, where if I don't want to do it, or I'm too busy, or they're too busy, or it's a client or somebody that doesn't necessarily fit our personality, we refer things back and forth to each other.
Right.
All the time, because we do, when you're dealing with somebody buying a home, it is very personal. And so sometimes what I've found is, my personality trait may not jive with yours. And so it may not be the most pleasant transaction or relationship. So you might as well work with somebody that you enjoy. It is really important. Hope you're enjoying the podcast. We want to give a shout out to our sponsor, the Acquisition CEO. If you're curious about buying or selling a business, hit him up at the link below, theacquisitionceo.com. Also give him a follow on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And now back to the podcast. Thanks.
That's super important to me. Like, especially with my referral partners, I do want to enjoy the person
Sure.
that I'm working with, especially with realtors.
Yeah.
I mean, as a loan officer, you're communicating constantly, and you got to kind of get to know each other's personalities. How do you like to be communicated with? Do you want to know every step? Do you not want to know every
Right.
step? Do you just want updates every now and then? And also, what kind of people do you jive with that I'm going to also be working with? So I think it's really important.
Well, you're talking about people's property and people's money.
The biggest investment usually of their lives.
Yeah. Plus, it's also emotional. You
Mm-hmm.
know, when you're moving and relocating, you're dealing with stuff and getting rid of stuff and dealing with the money and the kids and
Mm-hmm.
schools and jobs and the whole process. I mean, you've moved several times. I've probably moved 7 or 8 times in my lifetime,
Mm-hmm.
and just completed another move. And it's not that much fun, the
No.
whole moving part. So, you know, when we're going to be able to be part of that transaction for people, we've got to do the best that we can to offer, you know, not just a great level of service, but a great level of relationship and care and compassion, you know, in that situation, in those moments. Because they're tough.
It is. And my goal and majority of the feedback that I get on surveys is that I made people feel comfortable and that I had it under control and they didn't need to worry. And that's like my main goal.
Yeah.
Because I've done this for 23 years. There's not really a scenario I haven't seen before.
Right. I would. Yeah.
I mean, they can get kind of hairy sometimes, but I'm not afraid of any of it because it's never a no. It might be a not yet. It might be a here's what you got to do first. Or if something comes up in the middle, I do feel like I'm pretty good on my feet to figure out what else we got to do just because of how long I've done it and how many different things I've seen. And I used to be an underwriter
Yeah.
for years before
So
I
you
got
know a
into
lot
the
of the
sales
questions
side.
to ask.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I've
on
done,
that front side of things.
and I've pretty much done every role in the mortgage industry. So dealing with my team is just as important as my clients, if not, you know, they're
More.
equal for sure because I need to make sure that they're taking care of people the same way that I would. And
Right.
so I have an amazing team. I have expanded. I have a loan partner who is just incredible. Her level of care from my people and my realtors and referral partners is ridiculous. I've never had a loan partner like this before.
Yeah.
And then I just hired a marketing coordinator. And so slowly I have one loan officer that I'm working with as well that's kind of up. She's right over the North Carolina border.
Okay.
So she's working with the upstate team now too, but we're not in a hurry to expand necessarily. And my regional manager basically just said, add to the team for sure, maybe get up to like 4 or 5 more people, but take your time. There is no timeline. Pick the right people who have the same heart, who have the same drive. And so we will be looking for people, but not necessarily in a hasty way.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
it's always funny because a lot of times people think that more is better. And it's not always better. I always say it's not about more. It's about better. So if you take the right people and you build the right team and you have the right purpose and you have the right passion and you guys are aligned, you actually don't need more people because the people that you do have are more effective than, you know, a gaggle of people that are less effective, especially when they're alignment, you know, with the way that you like to operate. But let's talk about that too. So it takes more than one person. And that's a journey. A lot of times when you're in the beginning of entrepreneurship, you think, oh my goodness, how can I hire somebody? How can I bring on a team member? How can I hire social media content? How can I do this?
How can I delegate?
How can I delegate, right? Oh my goodness, you have all these you have all these fears, you know, because you're in the beginning. I would encourage people to, you know, a lot of that has to do with who you surround yourself with. If you hang out with other people who are building businesses and building teams and growing together, then by, you know, osmosis, I think is the right word, you will automatically kind of grow as well yourself. And then you have people to ask as a resource, hey, I've got to bring somebody on for this role, or I need to find somebody for this role. How do you do that? And then how do you generate the revenue in order to be able to pay that person or pay for those people? And there's some strategies around that as well. But I want people to know that it's not that scary of a journey. You just can't quit. You got to stay in it. I think it's Jeff Bezos. He says, be clear on the destination and flexible on the journey. But it does take a team of people. Delegation is necessary.
It's so hard sometimes.
I used to really struggle with that because I wanted things done a certain way. Fortunately, I have an amazing transaction coordinator, and I couldn't do it without her at this point. I should have her on the podcast, but she helps me and Shay with all of our real estate transactions and business stuff. But same kind of thing, finding the right people and getting aligned with people that are of the like mindset, especially like communication. It's funny because Shay and I communicate a lot differently. Like I'm a bullet point, straight, just dry, cut, clear kind of communicator.
Don't send me a long paragraph.
Don't send me a long paragraph. And then, you know, Shay is opposite. So working all that in the wheelhouse. And then sometimes Shay and I have some mutual clients, which is also really funny because I'm licensed in North Carolina now, but I didn't used to be. And so she would have a client in North Carolina and I'd have one in South Carolina. And so like they would be selling with her and buying with me. And I'm like, hey, Are you getting your things done? Like, we got to get this house sold because we
Right.
got one to buy, and timelines are starting to cross, and mortgages and lenders and everybody. So it's always funny, but it definitely takes a team of people, but a team of the right people.
It does have to be the right people, because in order for me to delegate, I have to trust them.
Sure.
And I will start with trust, for sure, and then just give like little pieces. But I almost wonder, now that I'm halfway to 84, I'm wondering.
It's birthday. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Yeah. 21.
21
That's
times
right.
2.
Right.
I think that with age and other things being so much more important, it's become so much easier to delegate and
Sure.
let things go. Like the magnitude or the importance of small things.
Yeah. Well, I think
they
that-
just changed.
I think that comes with clarity and wisdom. As you age, you realize what really is important and what isn't. And then also, I think that as we grow in life, we get more, we develop more grace. And so instead of having, it's not necessarily that we don't have a high expectation of somebody, but it's the fact that they're human, and that we were human, and that we were young, and that we should have grace as well with people. Grace goes a long way in leadership instead of beating people over the head. But I agree 100%. You learn what is more important than the perfection behind some of that stuff, like hanging out with your kids or just the emotional freedom.
Yeah, it's not worth the
from it.
stress.
You know, it's not worth the stress. That's one of my favorite, most interesting things that I get to hear from people is when you ask them how they're doing. They're busy. And I'm like, busy doing what? And they're just stressed. You know some people in life and they have this manic attitude almost. And I'm like, are you running a $100 million company or what are you doing? I'm like, no, I'm busy. I'm like, shouldn't you stop being busy? Like, life is too short to be stressed. And I think that that's a huge blessing in life when you learn that, because you kind of get to be set free from the anchors, that involves.
I think Chris Stapleton has a song and he says, I thought about thinking it through.
Yeah.
And I think you can get caught in that, thinking about thinking it through.
Yeah. And you can get hung up in all that stuff.
Yeah.
When at the end of the day, it kind of ties back to what I was saying earlier about it's not about more. It's about better. Like, be a better mom, be a better loan officer, be better emotionally, mentally, and even physically, right? Because most of our business problems stem from personal problems. A lot of people don't realize that life is, if it's an entrepreneur, life is more personal than it is just business. And business is more personal than just business.
Definitely.
And so a lot of that stuff carries over. But jumping back into that, let's talk about taking care of ourselves, right? Because that kind of stems from talking about stress and just being busy and having clarity and developing some wisdom about life. When you're young, you think you need more houses or more Lamborghinis or more Ferraris, and you see all this stuff, especially with social media these days and influencers, But let's talk about what it really means when you start to kind of get yourself free from the worries and the fears of that kind of stuff. Because I know you love to hike, and I know that, you love working on yourself and personal improvement, personal development. But let's talk about the power of that, in your life.
So I have to detach.
Sure.
I have to literally put it on the schedule that I'm going to detach, because otherwise I just won't. I'll just keep going. And whether that is because family time is family time, but also it's like stuff you have to do at the same time. So I have to literally go and be by myself. Yeah. And I do that in the woods a lot. I'm trying to figure out what trails are safe now after the hurricane.
Sure. And mudslides and all that craziness.
Yeah. So one of the first things that I did when I moved here is I was blessed enough to meet Jeff Busby, who is a coach for Cure Search Ultimate Hike, and he happened to be eating his lunch in the common area at Regis, and I saw he had a Cure Search vest on, and he started talking about hiking, and I was, what'd you say? Were you talking about hiking?
Outside?
And so he told me about it, and one of the first things I wanted to do was get plugged into something that was bigger than myself.
Sure.
And I think that's an important part of personal growth, and also being able to keep things in perspective when you are part of something that's bigger than yourself. And Cure Search is directly support research for childhood cancer. So the Ultimate Hike is 28.3 miles in a day of the Foothills Trail. And we do a lot of training, which also got me to be able to see trails that I probably wouldn't have even known about. And even though it's definitely a labor of love, because I think our longest training hike is 21 miles. So it just keeps,
just
just a little walk in the park. But you do get to detach, and you get to meet amazing people who have that in common with you, the fact that they want to give back.
Right.
So I definitely, hiking, being outside, just literally anything that exerts physical activity where I can just be quiet or listen to music or a podcast or something. That's about it.
Well, I think that it is important. A lot of times we do get busy and we get so consumed by the more and the more and more. that we forget to take time for ourselves. And eventually the machine breaks, right? So if you're on a long haul in a truck or something like that, and you just don't change your oil after a certain period of time, something's going to give. And unfortunately in life, especially in business among entrepreneurs who are real busy, they're riding around like a wheel falling off.
Right.
You know, and it's like, hey, you got to take care of yourself. And it kind of goes back to the concept of you can't pour from an empty cup, right? It's great, like you said, to be around kids and to be around family and all those kind of things, but you've got to go to a place where you can kind of recharge, you know, and refuel yourself in order to be able to be the high performance person that you are. And I think that that's important to reflect on, because a lot of people, they don't like to do that, especially if you like to do business, and we all struggle with that. But you made a really good point about how you put it on your calendar, right? So you've got a time block for that.
You have to. I'm
really big on living life by your calendar, even though I was running behind for this. But
it all worked out.
Right, it all worked out. Here we are anyway. It's all good. Living life on your calendar and putting everything on your calendar. I have a friend of mine, and he was a mentor for a while, and they've done $1 million a day in business. And so one of the first questions I asked them was, how do you do that? And they said, we utilize our calendar to the max. Like everything goes on the calendar. As an adult, what time do you wake up? As an adult, what time do you go to bed? What time are we eating supper? What time's the kids' ball games? Because there's so many things going on, and I've been guilty of this, where like you're supposed to be somewhere with your family and you're not, because you're doing other business things, and you get the phone call, hey, where are you? And you're like, obviously not where I'm supposed to be.
Given this phone call.
You know, I'm surprised. And so, you know, you learn to implement tools and systems to help you avoid that. But it's also important to time block out gym time, meditation time, quiet time, or those kind of things.
Or maybe that's all the same.
Yeah, or maybe it's all the same.
Gym, meditation, quiet.
Gym, meditation, quiet, whatever it is. But to put that on your calendar to protect that time. And it's also okay. I want to encourage people. I know a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, especially right out of the gate, they feel like that's selfish. But here's the thing. I tell people I have an appointment. Like I will put my phone on airplane mode while I'm in the gym, because I don't want it to ring, you know, because I can't not answer it.
Then there goes your mind.
Right. There goes your mind. And then if I don't answer it, I'm like, well, what did they need? Maybe they needed something important.
Yeah.
And they called me. Maybe I should call them back. So then I call them back. Yeah. So then you go call them back, and you're sitting on the front couch at the gym for like an hour, and you're like, oh man. And then an hour's go by, and then you're like, oh, well, now I'm late for this and this, and it's a compounding effect. So it's okay. I would say it's more than okay. It's actually just really important to take time for yourself, because you can't pour from an empty cup, and you've got to be refilled, you know? So.
And I do think that it takes time and experimenting to figure out what that is that works for you.
Yeah, and I think there's different seasons of life too, you know, where different things work or different things are fulfilling. But I know that it really encourages me, kind of like what you're talking about earlier with the kids' cancer thing.
Yeah.
Being connected to a higher purpose or something bigger than yourself.
Yep.
And there are seasons in life where different things motivate you, different things inspire you, or different things keep you recharged. Because business is hard.
Yeah.
Sales is hard. Life is hard. Especially, you know, you've got to do so many deals, and deals fall through, and interest rates change, and you expect one thing and something else happens. And that's why it's important to really be grounded and find your identity and your joy in something other than just the business stuff.
I feel like even too, like when it's slow, or if you're in a downturn, it's even more important to connect to something that's bigger than you. Like I remember during the recession in 2008, and I was with the kid's dad at that time, and I was supposed to transfer with Bank of America, and they said, JK, you don't have a job anymore. The job he was supposed to have fell through. He has 3 boys. Mariah was 4 months old, and neither of us had jobs. And obviously, we sold furniture out from underneath the kids and stuff to make sure we could figure it out. But we also went and volunteered places. And it was just such a turn mentally to do that. It's like, we're in a crappy situation. There are so many other situations.
There's so many other situations.
And I still feel so grateful. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's huge. And also a word of encouragement that everybody goes through hard times. There's going to be seasons in your life where you hope it looks good on the outside, but internally it's really, really is a struggle, which connecting to a higher purpose and a passion bigger than yourself can help with that. But also being grounded, and then clarity, like you've been through that season once in your life. And so when you start to see it coming again in your life, you already kind of know how to circumvent it, or, hey, okay, you can kind of deflect or shift or respond so that maybe it doesn't happen, or maybe it's not as bad, or mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, you can go, you know what? I know how to level up in this season of life that I'm about to enter.
I think that actually was a catalyst to get into sales instead of operations, because I was in operations when they said, sorry, you don't have a job. But had I been in sales, I mean, granted, it was tough, but I could have pivoted.
Sure.
I could have switched to something else in the mortgage industry. Flips were crazy, you know. all kinds of different stuff was going on at that time, but I couldn't pivot because my skill set was, at that time, I was an underwriter.
Yeah.
And I did go into underwriting, and I had a friend of mine tell me, you need to switch and go into the sales side. You will always have a cap on your income unless you do, and you have the personality for it. Now you have the knowledge base. Like, what do you need? Money in your bank? Are you scared? And I was 100% financially responsible for my kids. How do I just jump off this ledge?
Right.
And it took me a while until 2017 is when I finally just took the leap. And that first year I made the same amount I made last year making.
Isn't that wild?
Yep.
So that's always funny. We're talking about this, I think, at the Power Panel too. A lot of people, they think a job is safe, right? They think there's safety in that job. Or your parents encourage kids to go, oh, it's safe. Go get a job. You get a salary or just, hourly pay or whatever, but regular pay is safe. It's not safe because they can eliminate you. So that's what happened to me. That's how I got it. I wanted to be an entrepreneur and all these things, but I always had a job. So I felt comfortable, felt safe until I got kicked off the team.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, snap.
Yeah.
I got to go provide for a family. And I've spent 10 years of my life and my career that I'm not getting back. I mean, it's great experience and knowledge and relationships and all that, but I'm not getting this time back. And I've arrived here at a destination where I'm headed out the door. Well, I need to do something different. And I started asking some friends, and they talked about entrepreneurship and getting into business. And I had a lot of business management experience and that kind of stuff. And I was like, all right, I'm not going back. I am not going back. I call it a JOB. I'm not going back. Because in entrepreneurship and sales, you get to create your own destination.
Yeah.
It's totally up to you. Doesn't make it easy.
Embracing that is tough.
Embracing that is tough.
Figuring out what that really means.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How many phone calls or relationships or emails or all that got to do. But here's the good thing about it. I love to encourage people with this. You're not selling anybody anything. You're just solving a problem and earning a paycheck.
Yep.
Right? So when you have that perspective shift of sell, that eventually kind of happens out of the gate because that's what you hear on YouTube and your eyes are wide open and you're at sales conferences and you're like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
But really what you learn is that somebody has a problem. You get to develop the skill set and the emotional capacity, like you were saying, build a relationship and help people feel at ease in a situation that's dealing with their largest financial and probably emotional transaction in their life. You get to help them navigate that problem. So that's no longer really a sales mindset. In exchange for that, you get to earn a paycheck to provide for your family. That seems like a really great idea to me.
And control your schedule and be able to grow as big as you want or scale it as much as you want.
Yeah. And that's different for everybody too.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I mean, including myself, you come out of like a sales conference, you're like, I'm going to be the number one. I remember I was in insurance for a while. I was like, and I was the number one agent as a rookie, but you develop these things like, I'm going to do this. And really that's probably the wrong mindset. If you can again shift that to making an impact, having a purpose bigger than yourself, everything else starts to kind of fade away. But also then clients connect with you more because you're really there to help them solve a problem rather than sell them something.
I agree. I definitely had that shift. And now it's become obviously solving the problem and making people feel comfortable, but also just having peace in my own life.
Sure.
And if that means I do a certain amount or I don't move to the next level until I scale it properly or whatever so that I can feel peaceful, then that's what I do.
There is no price for peace. And I think you learn that. I think you have to go through some really hard moments
Creating
in life.
your own anxiety over and over.
I think you have to go through some hard moments in life that are self-inflicted before you really kind of look around and you're like, I'm not so sure this is worth it. When you have kids and all those kind of other things and your own personal health, what's the expense? I always tell people everything costs something. What's it worth? Now, you also really just made a really good point about you can become the person capable of doing more, but you can't do more before you become the person capable of doing the more, right? And so that's the important piece. And
putting the cart before the horse was my specialty for a while.
I think we all go through that. And we have that self-inflicted chaos. And we're like, I don't know what to do. I think the world's on fire. I think I'm on fire. And then you go, you know what? I got to back this up. And that's why I think personal development is such a big thing, whether that's mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, or financial, but learning from other people who are bigger, better, and stronger, and faster, and smarter than you. And implementing those strategies, right?
Right.
I think a lot of people, they go through life and they forget to implement a lot of simple things that, cost them their peace. So, or they arrive at a destination they don't like and the world's on fire. So
not a fan of either of those.
No, me either. So it's great having you on. I always like to ask people if there's, just a piece of advice or tip or wisdom. It could be personal, mom, whatever, business related. If there was one piece of advice that you like to share with people that you think that could make a difference in their lives and has made a difference in your life, what do you think that would be?
For me, I think work smarter, not harder or longer. necessarily. I feel like the just working yourself to death is over glorified.
I agree.
And I would say that for every single aspect of your life, whatever it is that you're doing, whether you're training for something, whether you're momming or dadding real hard, whether you're building your business, working in a W-2 job, whatever the case may be, I would just say listen to yourself and scale it and try to put efficiencies in where you can to protect your peace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's nothing worth the peace.
Correct.
Yeah.
Agree.
No, that's good. Thanks, Maggie. Great to see you. Happy birthday.
Thanks
for
you.
being on.